Self-muscle testing, then that critical key, and I'm going to just share a screen and go through one or two things as we get started. It is the key for wellness empowerment. And maybe a few people have got enough intuition to really understand what their body needs completely without it. But my experience has been that not only has my health dramatically improved since I started listening to my body, also clients have been able to rapidly change their health. We'll show my contact information again at the end. I want to take just a minute and do introductions, and so that each of you can, we've got just a small group here. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your name, I'll model this first. As you know, my name is Fred Davies. I am passionate about listening, learning from and listening to others, but listening to my body and also listening to God. That has made such a difference in just listening and learning what my body needs, what God expects me to be doing on a daily basis, how I can serve His children. And it's made a big difference. There's Marge. So you'll probably have to take off of speaker now and close, or she'll be getting double feedback real quick. What one challenge do I have? I actually have quite a few, but probably my biggest challenge is staying in tune with what God wants me to be doing on a consistent basis. It takes daily effort to do that. So, Deb, you're still there. You want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Deb Johnson, and I'm passionate about trying to be a good steward over my body. Trying to figure out how to take care of it better so that I can do the things that God wants me to do with it. And I have a challenge that I'm in a wheelchair from polio. I think my big challenge right now is I'm really trying to build up using muscle testing and which herbs, which exercise, which food, all of that is going to help me to take care of my body the best way. So I'm still feeling like a kindergartner, but it's coming along.
Very good. Thank you, Deb. Marge, thanks for joining us. You're still muted. There you are.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Well, my name is Marge Harris, and my passion is very similar to Deb's, except for that I'm not in the wheelchair, so that's not my challenge. But I am passionate about taking good care of my body and being in optimal health, staying fit and healthy. And I'm also passionate about clearing emotional blockages and limiting beliefs that interfere and create problems, with health. And I don't know if I have any challenges with that other than just still needing to learn more, and that my husband's not really supportive of this type of energy work. He's very much into the medical.
So Marge, I call it stewardship instead of energy work, and it gets around some of those people, because our body stewardship really is our responsibility, and God gave us that stewardship, and then He gave us tools like listening with muscle testing, and we'll talk about it more later. But our stewardship, I just this morning listened to Jesus's, one of His first miracles was to forgive sins and heal the man that was sitting next to the, anyway, he was paralyzed. And when the Pharisees next to him says, "How can you say you're forgiving sins?" His response was, "What is easier to say? I forgive your sins, or arise and walk. And my takeaway from that was, yes, Christ can heal all of our challenges. But the second takeaway was words mean something. And that's a gift that God gave us, is we not only have stewardship over this body, we have responsibility with commanding our body to be whole and well. And that's part of the muscle testing outcome, is listening, and then the stewardship that goes along with it to command that wholeness and wellness. So thank you, Marge. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I love that. Calling it a stewardship. I love that.
I don't see you, but I know you're still with us, Heather.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you just want a short introduction?
Yes, please.
I'm Heather, and I was lucky enough to meet Fred. Has it been 2 months or just 1 month? It seems like it's been longer than that, but
It's been a few months, yeah.
okay. His work has changed my life, and I'm so grateful. I feel more empowered. I feel more healthy. I have a daily regiment or routine that gets me closer to God and closer to my full health and capacity and potential. And yeah, that's me. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Then we're going to jump in, and just, if you've got additional things that makes muscle testing understandable to you, please share it. But I want to start with, what is muscle testing? And muscle testing really is, to me, finding truth. And it's such a simple language, 2 words really, a yes or no, or true or false. Truth and lie is the visual I gave here. And true or yes is usually indicated as strong, although there's 1 or 2 methods of muscle testing that it shows a different method instead of strong. It either leans towards, or it aligns a pendulum a different direction. And it usually shows as weak. And so it's easy to tell, once we understand the language, those 2 words, strong and weak, or a yes and a no. My experience is also that our body will give us a maybe or a try again if we understand that language. But that really is the critical key words. And you know, most of you, that I start each session with prayer with clients, because our stewardship is about your body, and I don't know what the truth is for it, but I do believe that through inspiration we can gain that truth. So it's really, really so powerful to understand what that truth is. 15 years ago or so, probably 16, 17 now, I had a naturopathic doctor go through all my body systems, and using push down in the arm method, went through and determined what systems were working properly, where the challenges were, and recommended a few herbs. Took her about an hour and a half, but amazingly, it honed in on some very critical things. And I had seen some muscle testing before that, but that was really the power opening to me of what was possible, of assessing every single system and finding really what we were doing. Since then, I don't teach or use push down on the arm. That takes 2 people. It is slow, and it introduces a second person's opinion and energy into the process. So I teach single-handed or 2-handed muscle testing, and I've been introduced to or discovered somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 36, 37 different methods. And so each client now, I actually start with, if they're not currently using a method they're comfortable with, I start with asking them, how can I help you find your method? And so we've had to find some new methods because not everyone uses the same method. I mentioned that muscle testing is how we listen to our body. And that listening method is what I call effective leadership. A true leader really does listen first. They make sure they understand the team, they understand the team's needs before they take any action. And with our muscle testing, we then understand our own body or spirit or emotional needs, and then we can take direct action based on understanding those needs. And that's another effective leadership principle, is we take action trusting that that listening has given us complete truth. And by that trust, then we learn and take action on what the right foods are to eat, what are the right herbs, and we have a tool to help us find that critical truth. And we'll delve a little teeny bit more into truth in those areas as we go through here. I want to share just a couple of stories of how muscle testing has helped people and with outcomes. And I'm going to drop out of screen share during these stories so that we can just focus on the stories. The first one is, maybe 3.5 years ago. I had a boy that was almost 5. I'm calling him a 5-year-old boy now because he was just getting ready to start school, and his parents were really concerned about him. He was that little boy with massive attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We knew the family through church, and this little boy was all over the place. You could hear him from any corner of the chapel. You could see him running up and down the aisles and around this system. He'd bounce off the seat. When his parents brought him over to my home office, he had explored the entire house before we finished a half hour of trying to figure out what to do for him. But then he participated in figuring out what was wrong, finding for attention deficit or autism challenged children, making sure all the brain functions are on, feedback loop is working, clearing the heavy metals, and then finding the few herbal things that will actually rebuild that feedback loop and get the digestion working properly. And within just a few weeks, a totally dramatically changed boy. If you're familiar with autism, most children with autism won't meet your gaze. They won't look you in the face. And that was true of that little boy up to that point. But just within a few weeks, he totally changed. He was calm. He would sit with his family. He would run up and give me a big hug and just greet me with so much joy. And just jumping ahead, he's doing wonderful in school. He's completely calm now. In fact, he's the calming influence in his family. And he has a tool, so he's in charge. And I'll just mention one instance of that tool that his parents told me later. They said that, and you know how this is, some teachers try and get the loving response of students by bringing candy and treats and so forth to classes. Well, he is now in charge, and when he's offered treats, he just simply says, "Oh, no, thank you. That makes my brain feel funny." And so he actually takes charge of what goes in his body now, and a totally, totally different outcome for this little boy because he's now in control and he doesn't have to worry about someone else pushing things on him that aren't right for him. I want to share another example of a child. I guess we can't call a 14-and-a-half-year-old girl a child. because she certainly didn't want to be thought of as a child. When I started with her, let me just give you a little teeny bit of background. You can imagine a girl of 14 and how much she really wanted to be with her friends and fitting in and being part of the group. And she was labeled as learning disabled, stupid. She just could not retain anything. And her friends were making a lot of fun of her because of that. And she was mainstream schooled. And for example, at the beginning or before her parents found me, she actually would study for hours the night before with a tutor, with her parents, and fail the test still the next day. She just could not progress in school. And it was really, really frustrating to her, to the point that she had decided that at least she could be successful at something, and she was starting to turn towards looking for male friends that would value her for her body instead of anything else, because that's the only thing she could think of to gain friendship. Well, quickly jumping forward, first visit with this young lady, we turned everything back on again. We assessed what was turned off, cleared the blocks out of the way, and turned all of those brain functions back on. Cleared the heavy metals, and made sure that all of her body functions were working. She literally went in 1 week from learning disabled to brilliant, because the next week when I met with her, she did everything we'd learned the first week, and she did all of her own muscle testing. She did all of her own clearing of what I term false set limits, the programming that we've imposed on ourselves that isn't God's programming. She did all of that herself. Well, I'll jump forward to the last visit with her and share what she said, that she recognized she had met all of her goals. She said, where before she would have her friends making fun of her, how stupid she was and so forth, and she'd just sit there because she didn't have any way of dealing with it. She'd sit there and listen to them and get more and more frustrated and depressed. And she told me, now, if my friends are talking about me, I just walk away. I leave them, that's their problem, that's not my problem. And secondly, she shared that now math was always her worst subject. It was really frustrating to her. Now she says she looks at a problem once, she works it through once, and every problem with that same style, she can instantly do. She has no problem with math, and she's doing extremely well in school now. The other one telling thing actually was something she fed back to me the very second visit we had. And I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm doing good. And I said, how do you know? And she says, well, because my brother tells me I'm not as mean as I used to be. Mm-hmm. So the feedback that she was getting was letting her know that she was already balancing out just as quickly as her body was being turned on and had everything working again. I'll share one quick example from an adult. And this woman had had a lot of challenging physical problems. Sick with every time anyone else was sick. She just couldn't stay well. And as soon as she had muscle testing and could test her food and the herbs that would strengthen her, she is no longer sick constantly. We'll share toward the end the methodology of how to figure out cold or flu or any other illness, and then how to figure out what herbs are there for it. So that's the few little examples I'd like to give, and I'll stop with that. I want to move to muscle testing methods and just talk about muscle testing methods. Each of you that have joined me this time have your own method, and I'm going to ask you what that is in a second. And then we're going to, for demonstration reasons, just demonstrate a few one-handed ones and a few two-handed ones to make sure that we all have the strength of learning a second one if we don't already have it, because it's pretty critical that we have more than one method. And let me switch to screen share real quick again. So let's just ask, what method are you using right now? Just unmute and share what method, and show us if you can. And I'll drop out of screen share for a second while we do that so we can see your method on screen. Who's first? Marge, go ahead. What method are you using?
I use two fingers like this or this or this. So I use two hands. I was doing this one mostly, but I sometimes get a little vigorous and now my thumb's really sore. So I'm having to use other fingers for this. Can you even see what I'm doing?
Yeah, I call that ring on ring, and so
Yeah.
good. And that works for you, and it's
Yeah,
really
it does. If I need to do it one-handed, then I use, just pressing down on a finger like that, but it's not as, I don't feel as confident with it.
Okay, excellent. And we'll talk more about what I call the finger push in just a moment, just enough to demonstrate that. Thank you, Marge. Deb, what is your method?
I used to use the same one that Marge was talking about, where you press on, and then if the finger slides off, then that's a no, or if it stays there, it's a yes. But I now use the one that you showed me one time, where I put my third finger on my thumb, and if it stays there, it's a yes. If it slides off, it's a no.
Okay, perfect. And I called that one just a snap or a clicker or whatever. And I like those single-handed methods. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Heather, do you want to share with us what method you're using?
Hello. I'm using the clicker method. Yes and no.
Perfect.
And I want to introduce my friend Chuck. It's his first introduction to muscle testing, so he's fascinated. It feels like a God-appointed opportunity for him. He's
Well, I'm glad you're with us.
Into this. Thank you.
We're going to go through each of those a little slower for you so that we're not just surveying them here in a moment. So you'll actually be able to practice with us. And by the end of it, maybe you can share with us whether one works or not. I want to take just a moment before we go any farther and mention some statistics before we start playing with methodologies. My experience, and these statistics are not published statistics. They're my experience and found through muscle testing. So you can discount them if you want, but I found them through the client load that I'm working through. Roughly 51% of women can learn muscle testing immediately, just from a demonstration like this class, and they can pick it up and start using it. 51% of women, and 70-something, 73 or 4% of men can pick it up immediately. That leaves almost 50% of women who cannot pick up muscle testing immediately. And you might ask, well, why? Why is it that for women, it is so hard to be able to successfully, instantly start muscle testing? And why for 25 or 30% of men is it also hard? My conclusion, if I can share just that way, is our society has taught us not to trust ourselves, but to trust authority figures, to trust medical personnel, to trust government, to trust other things instead of trusting ourselves. And I'll state again, God gave the stewardship to us individually to take care of our body. Didn't give it to anyone else. And so that stewardship is our ability to trust ourselves. Additionally, our society has slammed, distrusted women, abused women to such an extent that almost half have had enough abuse or enough distrust that muscle testing is very challenging for them to use. And we'll go through some methods, and then we're going to troubleshoot, because you may want to teach muscle testing to someone else, or you may want to just troubleshoot it for yourself. Why can't I successfully muscle test? So I'm going to go back to screen share right now and just walk through slowly, a little slower, a few of the methods that we've already mentioned. I want to start with one-handed methods. And I know we've mentioned the other two. We're going to start with the hardest one. I call it the tiny violin. And let me jump out of screen share. So we're going to cover 3 one-handed methods: tiny violin, the click snap, or one that's already been mentioned where it's just a snapping of the fingers, and then a finger press, which I've seen outcomes on that one more than one way, and we'll mention those when we get to it. So let me jump off of screen share, and then let's look at tiny violin. And it doesn't matter which finger you use. I typically use the closest one, the thumb and pointer, and then just go slowly around and think yes. So try it with me. Just a slow around and think yes. And just feel how that feels. Now, continue moving that thumb and finger slowly around and think or say out loud, show me a no. Show me a no. And see if you can feel the difference between your yes and your no. Again, this is the hardest one. I only have a handful of clients that can actually feel that one. That's why I'm starting with the hardest one. We'll move to ones that are more common, more easy to feel and understand in a moment. Quick survey. Can you feel the difference between your yes and your no on what I call the tiny violin method?
Not enough to trust it yet.
Okay. I like that answer. Marge?
For me, it just wouldn't circle anymore. It just stopped.
I
in its
love
tracks.
that. Marge, yours is very, very clear, and that's one method that several of my clients have. It just goes to a stop because the energy isn't flowing smoothly anymore. It just quits circling. A yes is smooth and a no is stop.
I've never tried that method before.
Heather, any feedback from you? Or
Yes, we both noticed a difference.
how cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I haven't tried that one yet.
Describe the difference that you each felt.
My yes felt very peaceful and it was moving just like you were showing. And then when I asked for no, my finger slid off my thumb.
Oh, I like that. And I have several others that do that. It kind of goes the other direction or just slides off completely. And
Yeah.
Well, the yes moves like that, more like in a circle. And when I go to a no, well, it just does exactly that right there. The thumb just comes straight across here. This is the first time I've been exposed to this at all or anything like this. So it's very, very interesting to me that shifts like that. And, trying to argue with myself of whether I'm consciously doing that or whether that's doing that. So You definitely have my attention.
I love that each one of you have had a different experience, and that's the key to muscle testing, is that each one of us have to understand it for ourselves. And we could have a survey of 3 or 4 other people or a dozen other people, and they may find a slightly different feel for their no. So be open as you're teaching people to not tell them what they should be feeling, but to recognize that it's their body that's giving them feedback. And I love that each one of you can feel that. You're unusual in that not most people can even feel the tiny violin. I can only think of just a handful of my clients that have taken the tiny violin as their primary one. But it's so powerful. I'll tell you some of the benefits that I love about tiny violin. If you're trying, for example, you're in a store and you're trying to find which product is the best one, tiny violin, no one can know what you're doing. It's not like you're making a motion that people can see. You can actually find truth or not truth based on something that's completely invisible to the rest of the world. And that's why I like the one-handed methods, and specifically the tiny violin, and kind of the reason I started there, because it's so invisible. And you can make choices based on the energy coming off of, for example, a supplement on the shelf that you pick up, and it looks like you're just looking at it, and you're actually muscle testing with the other hand to see if it's good for you or not. And you can put it back and try the next one. And no one knows that you're doing anything but looking. You're not looking strange in public, in other words. Excellent. I love that. I'm going to try a few other methodologies with the next one. I would encourage you to just file that one and go, well, maybe I'll explore that one. You need to find one that works for you consistently all the time, and then get really, really familiar with that first one. And then after that, like for me, you've heard of people that speak multiple languages, and they seem to pick up the next full language quite quickly. I'm working on 3 other languages right now. I speak enough German so I can talk German, but not fluently anymore. It's been 20 years since I've been in Germany. I'm working on Hebrew and Welsh and Navajo right now. And it's interesting, the more you work on languages, the faster they come to you. And it's the same with muscle testing, but get thoroughly comfortable with one method before you try and play with multiple methods. That's why I'm trying just to introduce a few methods today and say, let's find your method that you're most comfortable with. Next, let me demonstrate just the finger snap. And the outcome of this one may also be different depending on the person, but I do find that it's helpful if we understand just a little bit of the methodology on it. So methodology, I start with my thumb almost straight up, and this finger then is going to be going down the thumb with no resistance, because if you start pushing down this way, there's a flat spot and a resistance on it. So it's almost straight up. Just, this is my yes, and it locks there like an electronic lock, with our body locking it. And this is my no, just easily goes down. If I put more pressure on it, it'll snap down, and you can hear it click. But so think, this is my yes, or say it out loud, this is my yes, and just a gentle push so that it's pushing down a little bit, but kind of aligned. And then think, this is my no, and see what your action is. I'll mention 2 other methods for just testing while we're there, because not everyone uses just the show me a yes, show me a no methodology. anyone that's been around muscle testing training says, try truth and false statements that are obvious. My name is Fred. My name is Howard. You know, try your real name and then a false name and see if that works. You can try anything else that's completely truth or false. The color of the shirt you're wearing, anything that's true or false that you can use quickly. We'll go into some active use things here in a moment so that you can practice on things that are really there. Okay, quick survey. Just show a thumbs up, able to fill the yes and the no on the click snap one. Excellent. You're multi-language already then. and that's already 2 single-handed methods that are in your capability. The finger press method, Marge and Deb both have used this one. I have a tendency, I've seen it 2 different ways. This is my yes, this is my no, where it just slides off, or this is my yes, this is my no, where it pushes down. Push down doesn't work for me. It just puts a lot of pressure on that knuckle. But the slide off actually does work fine. And so just try it. If you want to try another one-handed method, just one finger on top of the other one, and you can use either hand for all of these. It should work for either hand. Think, this is my yes, push down a little bit, and then this is my no, and just see what methodology your body comes up with. Quick thumbs up. And Heather, you can respond also. I can't see you right now, but does the finger press method work for everyone? Okay, and again, don't try and use them all if you haven't found your comfortable one yet, but it does make a big difference to find a comfortable one and then consistently use it. I'm going to go to two-handed methods, because for some people, two-handed methods are critical, and I'll just share the screen to name them, and then we'll demonstrate them. The first one is what I call the ladybug method. It's called that because I picture a ladybug sitting on my thumb that I don't want to squash, and I only introduced that so that it wouldn't be too much pressure, because I had clients that were pushing down on the finger, and I'll show that in just a second when we drop out of screen share. The ring-on-ring method is just interlacing 2 fingers on both hands, and then I do the 2 fingertip method with some clients because 2 fingertips puts less pressure on the hands than the ring-on-ring method does. And you can modify that a lot of different ways also. So let me drop out of screen share. We'll demonstrate those. You can try them briefly. Marge, yours looks a lot like the ladybug method, but you round out things and snap it that way. So that's more of a ring-on-ring, but with 1 finger on the other hand. The reason I flattened it out is because I was using, with clients, I was using, literally doing 400 or 500 questions every hour, and it had to have no pressure because I was getting knuckles that were hurting if I used the other methods. So very gently, a thumb flat, straight out, ladybug sitting on top of that thumb so that the finger is resting on it but not pushing on it. There's no pressure on it. And then just a single finger pushing forward. A yes is solid. There's an electronic lock there. And a no is just a simple slide through. So test that one if you haven't tested before, with a show me a yes and then a show me no, and see what you get on that one. Works. Works. All right. Ring on ring, another simple method. Both hands create a ring and then interlaced, and it just is a tug, and show me a yes, show me a no, and it breaks because we go weak on the no. The 2 fingertip method is very similar, but there's less pressure because there's no lock inside of it. And so show me a yes, show me a no. One finger just slightly opens as it gets weak and it slides off. So show me a yes, show me a no. And so for 2-handed methods, very, very simple to just play with those 2-handed methods. Any challenges with any of those methods you want to ask right now? Because I want to jump from methods to solving challenges if we're at a good place to do that. Nobody's raising their hand or speaking up. Then I want to talk about some prerequisites to consistent muscle testing, and let's show a screen share to do that. And then we're going to take just a 2 or 3 minute break after we've gone through these prerequisites, because we're going to mention some things here that are pretty critical. So let me share the screen. Prerequisites to consistent muscle testing. The first one we'll mention is hydration. Water is absolutely critical. I met with a family yesterday who we've been working together a full month, and they can never get their hydration up. They're always in the 50, 60% on hydration. We had to go through and clear a whole bunch of blocks and some other things so that they can start getting their hydration up. But having enough water is a complete, simple prerequisite to consistent muscle testing. And with that prerequisite, I'll mention just a couple of rule of thumbs. Water, 1 ounce per pound of body weight per day, keeps us fully hydrated. We're a little bit like the old lead acid batteries where you had to top it up with distilled water every couple of weeks to keep it working fully. And our body, if it's not topped up properly with water, doesn't have the electrical current flowing properly and can't keep consistent muscle testing. Will either always be weak or always strong, or it'll just be inconsistent. We won't have consistent results. So if we're getting inconsistent results, that's the very first thing I check always. The second one is energy flowing forward. There's 5 methods. I'll talk about those in a second. The third one that I sometimes go through with clients if they're having challenges is they have actual mental or emotional blocks to self-muscle testing. And we have to clear those blocks. Okay? And guess how we discover them? With proxy muscle testing, and then clear them, and then they have their own capacity. Energy flowing forward, light flowing in the body, 2 very different concepts. Energy flowing forward is on the outside, light flowing is on the inside. We sometimes have to clear blocks to the light flowing completely before their muscle testing will work. And that's usually what I do in the first visit with a client, is we clear all of the blocks to the light flowing, clear through the body. Another significant impactor on muscle testing is medications, and especially if those medications are nerve, antidepressants, anti-anxieties, anything that affects brain function. And sometimes those will block muscle testing. And then after that, it's a new language. We have to practice it until we're completely comfortable speaking it. And we're going to just do the energy flowing forward quickly. And then because that will leave us standing up at the last one, we're going to take just a quick break, enough for you to refill water bottles or go to the bathroom or anything like that that would block muscle testing from working consistently. And then we're going to jump into some active things that you can do with muscle testing. So first, if you're not getting consistent muscle testing, the first question I use is my energy flowing forward? And if that's not true, then we want to correct that. So 5 different methods. Takes only a minute to go through each one of them, or less, 30 seconds. So the first one is 4 fingers, very gently, and tap on the top of your head, because the top of our head is where all of the meridians go out or are present. And just gentle tapping with 4 fingers for about 20 seconds is enough to flip the energy forward again, and so that we have positive energy. If you've ever felt that you just were having a bad day, or things were really dragging, this is a critical, quick method of instantly getting back your energy, just tapping on the head. Let's jump to methods 2 and 3. They're just different only by location. And so with an open palm, and I'm going to drop out of screen share so you can see me a little easier. With an open palm, tap on your shoulders or a knee, opposite shoulder, knee. And I'm just going to count it out with you if you'll do it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last one, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's enough crossover and knees or shoulders work to get the body reset and back to forward flowing again. Next, you can visualize a light flowing forward and just see a light going down. If you're a visualizer, a light going down the front of your body, under your feet, up the back, over your head, and you're sitting or walking in a wheel of light. And I can usually do it better if I'm quiet with my eyes closed. Depends on how good of a visualizer you are. And the last method, the 5th method that I always teach, and there are a few others, but these seem to be enough to have everyone able to do it. You can't see my feet. I can't get a camera direction towards there, but cross one ankle over the other ankle. And I usually stand up for this one, and I am going to stand up. And if you can do, just stand up one ankle over the other. And then hands out, thumbs down. Cross your opposite hand over the top from the ankle that's in front. So my right foot is forward. I'm crossing my left hand over top, and then I'm going to interlace my fingers and tuck them underneath my chin. And that ensures that the bottom is crossed, the top is crossed, and you can do this sitting also. This isn't something that has to be done standing. Bottom is crossed, top is crossed, and it's zeroed out against your chin. And in about 20 to 30 seconds, the energy is flowing forward again. And with clients, I can usually, if I've already connected to them, I can feel when their energy flips back forward again. You can actually feel everything calming down and flipping forward. We've been at this a whole hour. I'm going to mute for a moment and give you a chance to just grab a drink or go to the bathroom. Let's take a 3-minute, and I'll join back with you in just 3 minutes so that we can continue. just a preview of what we're going to do. We're going to make sure everyone has their own muscle testing method that they're comfortable with. And then we're going to talk about some methods so that you can help other people or do things for yourself. So we're going to go through another half a dozen examples of things you can do with muscle testing that will make a tremendous difference in how you can improve your health. So I'll see you in just a minute. Sounds good. Does anyone need any help? You've all got one you're comfortable with. Because in fact, let me just mention the next. That's not where I want. Teaching another person. First, and I'll just demonstrate as if I were doing this with a client. If they haven't already figured out their own muscle testing method, we actually ask their body what their muscle testing method is. And so I start with this method always with a client. I ask, may I connect? We always get permission. We don't just jump into muscle testing for someone else based on assumed permission or thinking we know what's best for them, because that's their body stewardship, not ours. So may I connect? And I make sure I have a verbal or a very clear nod, even from nonverbal children. Because even with children, I want to know with children, they've given me permission. I don't want to jump in and start doing something that's not very clearly permission from them. Then, does anyone need help? Or I'm going to just make up a name and show you the methodology. No immediate jump-ins. All right, I'm going to use Bob as the name. I didn't catch your friend's name, Heather. It was just muted enough at that moment that I didn't catch it. So I hope Bob is not the name. But I'll fill in the name. Bob's energy is flowing forward, and I make sure that's a yes. Otherwise, I have them stand up or tap or whatever it is to make sure energy is flowing forward first. And then Bob's yes is clear, Bob's no is clear. And I check that before I even start. And then I just test, starting with the single-handed muscle testing methods. I test which one will work best for them. And now that we're doing that consistently with clients, it's amazing how quick they are able to learn their own method if we don't have to clear a bunch of abuse or other things that would block muscle testing for them. So that is actually very consistent and quick. Sometimes, and I'll mention this, not that any of you have it, but sometimes you might find this. They say, oh, I can't muscle test. Well, we need to program the body. Let's say their methodology is the SNAP, but they're always getting a yes or always getting a no. And so we program the body simply like this. My yes is clear like this, and my no is clear like this. And we just go through it a time or two until it's obvious to them that they can always get a clear yes and a clear no, and they just practice it for a few minutes. So if you ever run into somebody that just can't do it, it may be because their body just isn't programmed to be able to recognize truth or falsehood. It's been unprogrammed by life experiences. I want to do a deeper dive, and you can help me on this one. Successful statements are critical. There has to be one clear yes answer. And each one of you, I'm sure, have found that if you make a complex statement and then can't understand why you can't get an answer, it's because it might have more than one answer, or there's too many components in that statement. For example, a simple statement is, I am ill. A complex statement is, I have a flu caused by a virus. Well, we're being very specific on flu or cold. It may not be a flu, and it may not be caused by a virus. Whereas I'm ill, I'm not feeling well, can get a true statement. And we'll go in a moment into a tool so that we can actually determine what is causing the illness and then how to clear that illness in a single day. So simple instead of complex. One clear yes is absolutely critical. When I get statements that don't seem to give me clear answers, I will flip that statement to the negative. Let's see if we can think of an example. I'm thinking of times when I've had a hidden block, for example, and I'm not getting a clear answer. I'll flip that to there is no hidden block and see if it gives me the opposite answer, or if I can just flip it to a not statement or a yes statement, the opposite of what I was trying to ask. On food, if I'm not getting a clear answer, I'm hungry and I'm getting a yes and a no kind of together, the first thing I do is get a drink of water, because often hunger is our body interprets thirst as hunger. And so I then test, oh, I'm actually thirsty. Yes, let me get a drink of water. Let me get hydrated again. And then I can check the hunger and actually see what kind of food will satisfy that hunger. And I'm going to drop out of screen share because there is a critical successful statement in using at least. And anytime we're trying to find percentages, we need the at least statement. So let me just mention a methodology. Hydration. We need to find hydration for successful muscle testing anyway, so it's often one we start with. And you can do this for yourself right now. I'm at least 50% hydrated, whatever method you're using. I'm at least 60% hydrated, 70% hydrated, 80% hydrated, at least 90% hydrated, at least 94, at least 95, at least 90. So right now I'm 95% hydrated, which is my bottom. I try and stay above 95. I don't like to go below 95% because our energy is at its peak in that top 5%. At least. Let me mention a couple of reasons why at least is critical. Let's say for Bob, we find out that his thyroid is low functioning and he needs to take a thyroid herb, a thyroid strengthening herb. And Bob is going, oh, I need one thyroid herb, I need two, I need three, I need four. He's getting no's all the way up. Whereas he may need 6 or 7, he's probably not going to go that high. If he'll say at least, I need at least one, I need at least 2 capsules, I need at least 3, 4, 5, 6. At 6, he's still got a strong. At 7, it broke because the at least gave him truths clear up till when it breaks. So yes, 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 yes. No, the last yes was how much was needed. Which brings up a really good question of methodology for testing for different kinds of things. At least is one of those critical pieces. And then we just adjust it to what it is. Let me see if I've got a slide. This will actually do it toward the end. This is another critical piece of muscle testing. I find this on so many clients, and I call it, let me show the screen. I call it respectful communication. we're talking to a friend. At least we hope our friend, our body is our friend. So we should be talking with respectful communication. When we're talking to a friend, let's say Marge and Deb are talking to each other, and Marge has asked a question and Deb gives an answer. Marge asks the same question again, Deb gives the same answer. 5, 6 times in a row, at some point, if that's us with our body's just going to go, I already told you that answer, I'm not answering again. And then it feels like a no, but it's actually been a yes all along. And our body just got tired of going, next. You're being rude to me, you're not believing me. So it's that trust piece in it. If we truly trust ourselves, we're going to take action on the answer. For example, on food, apples are good for me. I get a yes, I'm going to eat an apple. I need an apple right now. I get a yes, I'm going to eat an apple. What happens if I ignore that completely? I'm hungry, I get a yes on what's good for me. I ignore it, I don't do anything about it. Hydration. I'm thirsty. Not right now, I just got a drink. But if that's a yes, if I don't get a drink of water, my body is going to say, I already gave you an answer. Where's the trust here? What kind of action are you going to take on that trust now so that we know that it's respectful communication back and forth? Have any of you had experience with that respectful communication, what I call respectful communication methodology, with either yourself or with somebody that you're helping with, where they don't trust themselves, they don't take any action, and consequently their ability goes down from there? Go
I
ahead, Dan.
more see people who don't trust their muscle testing, and so they won't do it, or they do it and they don't trust themselves.
Yes.
It's not that they're not trusting their body as much as, I'm not sure that's really the answer.
Yeah, and if we take no action, it really does send a message that why give you an answer if you're not going to trust me and actually do something about that issue? So it makes a huge difference. Marge, did you have a comment there?
Well, not really, except for sometimes maybe there's something blocking them trusting themselves that they can clear. You know, something has programmed them at some point in their life where they do not trust themselves. I thought I trusted myself really well, and I do with muscle testing, but in some things I don't. And I only realized that from watching a movie the other night called Rescued by Ruby. And that's an excellent movie if anybody wants to watch it. Not just, have you seen it, Deb? She's nodding her head. And where he did not trust his dog. He did not trust enough to give the right answer. It was a rescue dog. And I asked myself, do I trust myself? And I got to know. So sometimes I don't. I mean, in muscle testing, I mostly do.
Yeah, and that's beautiful to recognize that we can even ask those kinds of questions. I have a whole group of slides to help us understand how to get clients through that, because I run into it a lot. It seems like at least 50% of the clients that find me have a trust issue. And that's the reason their body is not healing, is because they haven't trusted themselves to do what they need to do. And it's often because of childhood abuse. It's often because of some significant damage outside of their control early in life. And just learning forgiveness and accepting, clearing all those blocks, as you mentioned, is enough to get through that. Sometimes that doesn't happen in 1 or 2 sessions. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions to clear all those blocks and get to a completely trusting atmosphere. And that's where having someone that understands and has had enough experience in the blocks really does make a big difference. I want to jump, Heather, and I apologize, I did not hear your friend's name. Any questions on this one? And reintroduce your friend's name so that I'm not constantly not remembering it.
It's okay. His name is Chuck.
Chuck, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions in this area of just framing a statement?
No, just listening.
This is a lot of new material. I have to admit, I'm cramming in 15 years worth of learning into just a couple of hours. And it's amazing how much power this has. And we're going to see now, I'm going to jump to really what is the power of muscle testing. So what can we use muscle testing for? It's actually usable anything wellness of the body related, which raises the question, what can we not use muscle testing for? And I'm going to answer that one right up front. This is not to be used for fortune telling. You know, am I supposed to marry somebody? Am I supposed to get a job? So forth and so on. You can ask truth questions around those things. Is this a healthy relationship for me? But don't make decisions with muscle testing that should take some very careful thought through, extended time exposure, so forth, type things. This is, at least I limit it to, and I found that that's a safe limitation, I limit it to the wellness of my body. That means wellness of heart, mind, body, and spirit, because that's me. That's the stewardship that God gave me. And so we can ask what foods are best for us. And in fact, I do ask every single time what food is best for me right now. I don't leave that up to second guess or chance, because I'm trying to rebuild my health. I ask, is this food building for my body? And I'll quickly mention this. This has a much deeper application, but simple understanding of foods are building, neutral, or toxic. And if we ask, is this apple building? And we get a yes, and we eat the apple. Is this white processed sugar donut building? Well, we ought to follow the answer we get on that, because if it's toxic to us, it will actually take our energy away. Some people don't notice their resilience is enough. I have a client, husband and wife team, that the husband is super resilient. He can eat absolutely anything and have no side effects. The wife, if she eats those same things, she's significantly dragged down. And we have to recognize we're not all the same. We need to customize our food with recognition that we're built differently than each other, and very broadly differently. The same with herbs. We only need very small supplementation, my experience, once we have turned everything back on again and repaired the damage. Our supplementation needs with herbs and with other supplements is extremely small. But while we're repairing, that might be a lot of damage to repair. My own experience, doing 12, 15 different things just to repair the damage. And then once all the damage is repaired, 1, 2 things, maybe nothing is needed to repair damage in the body. So we've already mentioned hydration percentage briefly. That's an area where we can use the at least % type process. I want to jump to a clear an illness in one day. And before we go through and and truly look at this when I'm going to ask anyone here not feeling well, we can do this as an example. Raise your hand, jump in. We'll just go through the example of this and how it works. Everybody's well. All right.
Did you get a volunteer?
Do you need to be the volunteer, Heather?
I can be a volunteer if you need a volunteer.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to just walk through the process and you're going to do the process. I'm going to switch back to screen share and then we're going to walk through this one step at a time. And so that you can see
Is that what you were
how
just
the
doing?
process works.
I think so.
All right, Heather, your muscle testing's working today?
I hope so.
All right. First thing, like I mentioned before, I'm not feeling well or I have an illness. And make sure that's actually true because we won't get clear answers anywhere else if that's not a true statement to begin with.
I am not feeling well or I have an illness. I got a yes.
Okay. Our next question is that illness bacterial? And then the next question is that illness viral? And it might be both true.
Okay, I tested yes for a bacterial.
Bacterial, perfect. Okay, so that's step one. And I didn't go to step preceding it. I have an illness because that's kind of assumed because we've jumped into this methodology. So you found that it's bacterial. I'll just mention what this chart shows us. Most of you have seen it before, but some haven't. So let's just talk about what this chart can show us. Below the antibiotic herbs group, and downward in that column, are herbs that will kill a bacteria. Below the antiviral herbs column are herbs that will kill a virus. Antifungal herbs that will kill a fungus, and then antiparasitic herbs or plants that will kill a parasite. So the next step, since Heather, you found that it's bacterial, is to go through one at a time and just state something like aloe will clear this bacteria, or aloe will be effective. You can use any wording there, and then what we want to do is we want to write down all the effective ones. So I'm going to just find a pencil, and you're going to state what you find as we go.
Okay. Can you see my fingers?
Yes, but still say it out loud because I may be writing, I might not see it.
Aloe is effective in clearing this bacteria. No. Burdock is effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes. Calendula is effective in clearing the bacteria. No. Is it echinacea?
Yes.
Echinacea root is effective in clearing this bacteria. Yes. Eucalyptus is effective in clearing this bacteria. No. Garlic is effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes. Ginger is effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes. I was hoping for ginger because I've been eating a lot of ginger.
Oh, good. It's interesting how often we're drawn to what will help us. Keep going.
Golden seal will be effective in clearing the bacteria. No. Licorice root will be effective in clearing the bacteria. No. Mullein will be effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes. Peppermint will be effective in clearing the bacteria. No. Sage will be effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes. Wormwood will be effective in clearing the bacteria. Yes.
Beautiful. And thank you for being willing to demonstrate that. I'm going to just mention the next two steps and we're going to drop out so that we can see each other a little bit better because it's limited to a corner there when we have this. You found how many of those things would work. Now, the next step is to see, let's see, burdock, echinacea, garlic, ginger, mullein, sage, and wormwood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them came up true. So the next step is really to find out how many of them are needed to clear it in one day, because we want to get rid of it completely and get healthy again in one day. And for bacteria and viral herbs, as you can see on the slide, my experience with me and multiple people is very, very, very often, almost always, we can be completely effective in a single day. With funguses and parasites, because they try and maintain their own living in a host, they take some real aggressive action and multiple days to clear. So we don't give up on them, we just continue to be extremely aggressive to clear them. So I'm going to drop out because the next two steps we need to be able to see a little bit more and talk through. All right, Heather, the next step of this is to ask, and I don't know if you were able to write down, I'm going to throw them on a whiteboard if I can find a way to just type it in. Type in text. So burdock, echinacea, pardon my spelling if it's not completely correct, garlic, ginger, mullein, sage, and wormwood. All right, the next piece of this is to identify if we need all of those or if we need just a few of them. And here's that at least statement coming into play. So Heather, I need at least one, I need at least two, I need at least three until you get a no, all the way up to 7 if it goes that high.
Do I need to say a whole sentence or just say I need at least?
As long as your question is clear in your mind, it just needs, I need at least one, I need at least two.
I need at least one, I need at least two, I need at least three. I got to know for 3.
Okay, so the top 2, because, and just for everyone's knowledge, I usually find 2, 3, or 4 as critical, occasionally more, but not often. So what do you, this is the next question I always come up with. You need 2. What do you already have in the house? What do you have access to already out of that list?
I have mullein. And I don't know if calendula is on there or not. That might be the only one I have.
Did you say you were taking ginger?
I do have ginger, yes. And I have
Okay.
peppermint essential oil.
Okay, so ginger and mullein are on the list.
Okay.
You're probably on a phone, so you're not seeing the whiteboard too, because you can only see
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
So I'm going to close the whiteboard and I'm going to close the screen share. And we're going to go with, you have mullein and you have ginger. The last question really is, will mullein and ginger will be completely effective in one day to clear it?
Mullein and ginger will be completely effective in one day to clear it. Yes.
Okay, now the amount is your critical piece. And this is where it really comes into trusting your body. Because you have mullein, you have ginger, it's how much does it take every hour to clear it? And we go super aggressive because we don't want to leave our body sick. And with some aggressiveness, we can clear it completely in one day. It's gone, it's done. It's no longer an illness that we're fighting one day later. So there's the key. There is a super, thank you for being willing to help us through this example of this process. There's a super clear example of how muscle testing gets us well in a day and clears the need to go and ask any other expert what to do. Questions about the process from anyone?
My question would be how to take these, because I are they in capsule form, or is it a tea? Is it a tincture? Is it a homeopathic? What kind of a product is it? So I wouldn't know how to test how much to take. Or even with ginger, do I take it as a tea, as a capsule, as a tablet that I've dissolved in my mouth? I wouldn't know how.
Marge, that's a perfect question. Let's give some principles to govern that one, because every one of us are going to have something different in our house when we come up to this one. Or maybe we're going to go to the store because we don't have everything we need and we're going to be looking for it. And then you ask, how do I muscle test for that? It's worth having a broad exposure. And let me bring this back up on screen share just so we can talk to this simple look. You'll notice that some of them are in light blue on more than one column. So for example, aloe is in antifungal and in antibiotic. Calendula, echinacea, garlic, ginger, licorice, and mullein are all antibiotic, antiviral, and antifungal. And then peppermint is in antibiotic and antiviral column. Sage is in antibiotic and antiviral. Oregano's in antiviral and antifungal. If they cross over columns and they have more than one property, I listed them with a bridge in that highlight color, that light blue or dark blue highlight color. The reason I did that, these are partial lists of the herbs that are effective as antibiotic or antiviral herbs. There's actually more than 70 plants in each of those groups that are antibiotic or antiviral. Why are these few the ones I chose to put on this page? Because they're more common. And they cross over, in many cases, they cross over multiple lines. So back to your question of how do I take them? Any way you can. Let's say you got, in Heather's case, ginger fresh. Grate some ginger and make a really strong tea and take it fresh. If you have ginger capsules, take it as capsules. If you got ginger as a powder, throw a spoonful of powder in water, hot water, and drink it kind of like a tea. Whatever you got, use. Mullein, Heather, remind me, you have mullein as a capsule or as a tea? You're still on mute, apparently, Heather. So I can't hear you, Heather, but let's say you've got mullein as capsules, take it as capsules. And then you're testing, I need at least 1 capsule, 2 capsules, 3 capsules, 4 capsules, and test it every single hour. So you're getting enough that day to completely kill that bacterial infection. If you got it as a whole plant, I'll mention for mullein, you need to filter mullein because mullein as a whole plant is got those little teeny hairs on the leaf and they'll irritate the throat. So we filter it through paper or through a cloth filter. What do you have, Heather?
I have the tincture. Sorry, I went to take my mullein.
Oh, perfect. So
I
you
had
have
to
a
take some-
tincture.
Yeah, I
And,
didn't test how much.
and so for tinctures, how do you test how much?
I've been doing it by the dropper flow.
Perfect. And if you get a no to a full dropper full, I typically go back to, oh, I need at least a half a dropper full. I still get a no. I need at least 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drops. A half a dropper full is roughly equal to 15 drops, depending on the size of the dropper, and a full is roughly equal to 30 drops. And so, perfect. Thank you for going and taking immediate action. And that's
I
a
appreciate it.
celebration.
Thank
That's-
you. Yes.
That's perfect. And take it however you got it. But the critical second principle there is take it in high enough amounts so that it actually is being effective. And so test every hour or every hour and a half or 2 hours so you're getting enough in, and drinking enough teas and waters to go along with that so that you're staying fully hydrated while your body's flushing out the toxins. We have a tendency to get sick faster if our body is toxic and has things for bacteria or viruses to feed on. It's that old principle of flies only are around if there's something for them to feed on. And that's the same with our illnesses. If we have a completely clean body, we typically won't have much susceptibility to illness because there's not much for it to feed on, if that principle makes sense. Okay, stop the screen share. Thank you, Heather, for demonstrating both how to do the whole process and to take immediate action. That's beautiful. I want to go through this again because you might end up doing this for someone. And if you're going to try and help somebody, again, ask their permission. May I connect to you? Don't just assume permission, always ask. And then make sure it's going to be consistent. Their energy is flowing forward. You got to get a yes on that one first, or use those 5 methods we taught to flip it forward. The yes is clear, the no is clear, and then you can start using any of the skills that you have to help that individual gain full capacity. We've learned a few skills today, and I actually had planned on talking about 1 or 2 others, but I don't want to push longer on skills because I want to get a little bit of feedback from you before our time is up, and then just invite any questions. So skills, you can use your whole arsenal. Can you imagine what gift that is to a mother to be able to say, I can keep my kids well? I wish I'd thrown a few pictures in this presentation. I have a couple of neighbors who have decided that I can help them with anything their kids are challenged with. And I have to keep reminding them, no, you're the mom, you're the one that's helping. I am happy to be a resource if you need to know what herb will help with a specific something, but you're the one that's muscle testing for them because you're their mom. 2 examples from the same family from just a couple of weeks, from the last 2 weeks. Just before school started again, this family had gone out, done a little ice skating, and the 8-9-year-old daughter fell down and just ripped her whole side of her face off on the ice. It was a raw hamburger face. And the mother was calling and saying, now what do I do? Her face is bleeding. The skin's all been tore off. What do I do? And I just said, cover it with the complete tissue and bone ointment, completely thick, and keep it thick on it for the next 4 or 5 days until it completely heals. If I had pictures, I could show you day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And then I saw the girl because she's neighborhood girl. Thanks for joining us, Heather. She's a neighborhood girl, and this girl, she happened to be over visiting our next door neighbor, and I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And she turned around to talk to me. Her face was completely clear in less than a week after being totally a mess just a week prior to that. And her mother sent me pictures each day of the progress that was being made. It was 4 days just a bare pink, where it had been complete hamburgered 4 days before that. And then her son did something more damaging just a couple of days later. And she asked me, "How do I take care of this?" And I won't tell you what it was. It was a little private to the little guy, but I love it that mothers can know that they've got it completely in control, and they're not running to the emergency room. They're not doing things that would be damaging long-term to their family.
Fred, on the complete tissue and bone, did you make that ointment from the cut leaves and plant?
She used the Dr. Christopher's commercial ointment, but yes, the BF&C, we've made our own with olive oil and just the cut formula. And 3 days in roughly 120 degrees, and it completely transfers the property over into the oil. And then it's just a matter of knowing how small of an amount of beeswax to melt and mix with that. And my wife has done that multiple times. I leave the cooking to her so I don't damage her pots and pans in her kitchen. I'm going to ask this last question, and then we're going to close up. Any big ahas for you? Both of you have been using muscle testing before, and you know the tools. What did you learn new today?
I learned about the process, the series of questions for going from an illness to, what to do about it, and how much, and at least this, and that kind of thing. I do have a question. When you're asking your body, an apple would be good for me now, or whatever breakfast you're having, or whatever herb or anything like that.
Perfect.
Have you gotten it down to where you just can hold the herb and say 1, 2, 3, instead of the whole question?
I like the question, Deb. And yes, as long as you've pre-programmed your body, then that's all I ask anymore. It's an assumed at least. I've made sure that my body knows that I'm asking at least, because I've stuck with that for so many years. And then it's just how much, and then yes, you're ready to go. And I'll reach for it with one hand and muscle test with the other hand with, and just go, I need that. Yes. How about the next one? And it goes very quickly once you're completely comfortable with it. So I love the question. Yes, you don't have to restate a big long sentence every time. To begin with, I do teach clients to state a clear statement, and to make it clear so that it's only got one possible answer. And because sometimes we think in complex statements. And to think complexly and expect our body to be able to answer those 4 or 5 nested questions is too much. We have to keep it to one question, one statement at a time. So perfect question. And thank you for sharing with us what your big aha was, what you learned from today. Marge, you've been using muscle testing forever. What did you learn today?
It was really helpful for me to learn how to help others to test. All those ways that you gave, that's really helpful, because so many people feel like they can't do it. So that was helpful to go through those series of questions to help figure out, which way there is their energy flowing forward and backward, and how to, I knew some ways to correct it, but you introduced some others that I didn't know about. So that was very helpful.
I want to just share one other slide because I jumped it earlier to go to where we were. And Deb has experienced this, but I start on systems rather than symptoms. And let me explain what that means. Our body is made up of multiple systems, hydration systems, fluid systems, cleansing systems you've mentioned, but then all of our glands, our organs, our chakras, and so forth. And when someone comes to me with a single issue, I don't start on trying to solve their symptom typically. We start with, and you've experienced this, Deb, we start with systems. We start with, are all the systems on? And is everything actually working? Because oftentimes our illness is because we've had whole parts of our body shut down, and it just can't all work together when it's all shut down. So I actually start with, and in fact, if I can find it, I'll just show you real quick the form I start with so that you can see if it'll finish loading. There you go. We go through all the glands, all the systems. On this far side is the heavy metal, potential heavy metal toxicities. Then we go through all the organs, the connections, mental, emotional, spiritual, and universal connections that our body has. We go through all the brain functions. We go through the acid-alkaline buffers. And then we also check for any ailments, for the friendly bacteria, and check to make sure the vagus nerve is on. Once all those are on, so often the body will balance itself and get back to normal function. So instead of trying to solve individual problems, we're restoring whole function, if that makes sense.
How often would you go through this process?
Oh, perfect question, Deb. For myself, I do it at least once a year. And if there's problems, I do it more often than that. If I'm experiencing a problem, I go, well, are all my glands online? Marge, if you haven't had this concept talked about before, each one of those has a power circuit. And if the power circuit is on, kind of like a circuit breaker in our house, if the power circuit's on, then the power and light is on there. If it's off, it can't repair because the light's not on in that body temple room, if I can call it that. And so at least once a year, I go through and do a full check on myself. If something doesn't feel right, I just go through and do what I call a quick check. All of my glands are on, all of my organs are online, all of my brain functions online, all my systems are online. I just go through each one of those. And if I find something that's not on, then we dig down a little deeper and go flip the breaker back on again, if you will. Start with asking their body where to start first, because each one of us have different priorities. And so we walk that process through in a priority-based walk through, clearing the blocks before we turn it back on again. You don't want to have a flooded circuit, flooded with emotion, flooded with ancestral blockages, with anything, and then flip the power on in that circuit. Because if you flip it on, it's not going to stay on. It's going to flip right back off again.
Thank you. That's excellent. Yeah.
And if you've got children with specific challenges like attention deficit or hyperactivity or autism or so forth, it takes a very thorough approach to clearing the heavy metals out and clearing all the blocks and getting everything turned back on. The second thing that I do typically now, and Deb, I don't remember whether we started here. I know we ended up getting here, but I do what I call false set limits. And we actually go through and reprogram the body back to God's design. And that takes a little bit more of an introduction than what shows here. And then I always show them how to do the daily checklist so they stay 100% turned on. Because if I had one just yesterday, she was back at 52% and it had only been a month. And because it only takes one, no, I had another one yesterday morning. It had been 1 week. She stayed at 100%. She had an emotional drain the night before. She was back at her original 50% when she came and saw me that day. And so we have to daily reset. And we've got to know the other tools to stay at 100%. Hers happened to be an emotional slam. We had to clear 5 or 6 emotions. She got back to 100% again. And didn't even realize that that slam had knocked her that far down because her body was resilient and she's just a power through person. So some people don't even know that unless you muscle test and find out where you're at. And if you have people that just need a process, or they've got children that you're not able to help, I work with all kinds of clients, but I have a significant soft spot for children who can have instant change because it changes their whole future. They can, especially if we can catch them before they get up into the 20s, while they're still in school, their whole future changes. They can have a capacity that they would have never had before. So,
Fred,
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Deb.
Go ahead. I'm kind of changing the subject a little bit. Do you want to go ahead?
No, mine was different too.
Have you had any experience with children with oppositional disorder type things?
oppositional defiant disorder is in the same spectrum, has the same cause, I will say, as ADD, ADHD, autism. It's all feedback loop. Let me give you an example of the why. I'm going to stop. Well, no, I won't either. Oppositional defiant disorder really is them saying, I'm frustrated that other people are trying to control me and I don't have control of myself. And if we can give them back control of their feedback loop and their learning capabilities and everything else, and teach their parents to let them take control so that they can start experiencing that, the muscle testing tool gives them back that capability instantly. And I've had children with, and often I'm working with one right now whose mother, first thing she came to me was, he said, he's got ADHD, he's got oppositional defiant disorder, and he's got autism. And she named one other one. I said, let me walk through what the overlaps of all those are, and then realize those are all the same disorder. Those mean his digestive processes aren't working properly. He has.
Did you say digestive processes?
Yeah, digestion. Digestion, the heavy metals are significantly blocking the systems from working properly, and he's got some brain functions that are turned off. Once those brain functions are all turned on, the blocks are out of the way, digestion is working properly, there's no heavy metals, they end up being a different child. Almost immediately. It's hard to imagine that they've lived, how many ever years, 14, 16, 18 years with all those challenges. And then you go, okay, parents, they have full capability now. Let them take full capability. Let them recognize that they can make their own decisions and choose their own foods and begin to eat more things. And sometimes the harder one to change is the parent, not the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deb's question was right along with what I was going to ask.
I learned that that's called grace for grace. because God has given the two of you and me to some degree a grace of understanding truths. And when he gives you that grace, then it's like, receiving the 5 talents. You're doubling them and giving them back. And so you're giving grace for the grace that you've been given.
Thank you. Yeah, that is true. The ability to share that with others and see the gifts that God gives move forward in their life. Yeah. And so, in conclusion, muscle testing as a gift, every person can learn it. I've experienced it. I've seen it. I've seen every single person can learn muscle testing as a gift. And it can make a huge difference. And especially as we empower other people to use it so that they've got that tool every day, all day long for them.